Thank you to Sawtooth44 and Kyle Baker for donating to our Patreon. It means a lot to us, and I hope you enjoy the content we put out. On with the video.
I am your shield. I am your sword. I know you. Your past. Your future.
Halo 3 is the best one. I'm sorry, that's just the way the world works. Grass grows, birds fly, sun shines, and brother, Halo 3 is a masterpiece. Though while this used to feel like the consensus among the community, recently has come into question and debated more so than I've ever seen before. Was Halo 3 really that good? Has it aged poorly? Has the benefit of time allowed us to see cracks in the game that were once covered? Well, let's have a look. Let's see if my opinion changes throughout the course of making this video. Let's see if I change any other opinions or convince some of you out there of this game's worth. I know it's a brief introduction and a rather informal one at that, but I can't wait to get into this game. So, let's talk about Halo 3. Admittedly guys, there's not too much to talk about with the development of the game, at least in comparison to Combat Evolved or 2, but regardless, let's get you up to speed in case you missed what happened in the previous game. Halo 2 did phenomenally well. It got a ton of money for Bungie and was beloved by fans, and yet Bungie believed that they could have done so much better. Plenty of aspects of Halo 2 weren't to the team's liking, specifically the story of which the entire final act was cut, leaving one ballbuster of a cliffhanger. So the task now, in their own eyes, was to create a game that made up for the mistakes of Halo 2. Halo 3 was meant to be the jewel in the crown of the Halo series, and luckily Bungie would be getting some new and more powerful technology to be playing with. They were upgrading from the hardware of the Xbox to the Xbox 360. And with that, they'd be given so much more to play with. Not only could they make their games better looking, as one would expect with upgrading to a new console like that, but they could add more stuff into enemy encounters, have smarter enemies, a more real and interactable environment, general improvements all across the board, and apparently the divisions of Bungie were almost competing with each other to see to whom these chunks of processing power would go to. Plenty of advancements were made to what could be interacted with in the game, from the water to the plants, and not only that, but how the game itself could be interacted with. The chief example of this is Theater Mode and Forge, which I'll touch upon later. As for the story, the development of it seemed a little hectic. Once again, it seems that the choices for the story, just like in Halo 2, were left up to a committee with a few corrections and suggestions made by Bungie's senior staff, such as composer Marty O'Donnell suggesting that some of the characters should die to raise the stakes. But despite this, the development of Halo 3 has been described as pretty smooth, and honestly because of that there's so little to comment on. They made the game, boys. They got it done. I don't know what to say. Is there anything I can talk about? Well, there is one thing I can talk about.
Rated M for mature.
Yeah, I let that full thing play. You really thought I wasn't? It's genuinely one of the most beautiful pieces of media I've ever seen. It's an advert for a video game. There's something so raw and real about these models that it looks like we're almost seeing a recreation of a real battle. And the rest of the Believe ad campaign delivered the same kind of emotional storytelling, with some grave hints at what's to come in the game itself. These ads were a series of live-action shorts interviewing the fictional survivors of the Battle of Earth, talking about their experiences fighting against the Covenant and often leading into describing the Master Chief, painting him as a larger-than-life and Herculean entity. The juxtaposition between these stories, the darkness and grittiness that would come with actually facing down an imposing alien threat like the Covenant, and the hope and optimism that Master Chief inspired, it feels like an ancient legendary hero come to life. On top of that, like I said, they had hints of what's going to be in the game, such as the Brute Spiker, a new Covenant weapon, but most noticeably was the talk of Master Chief's grave, which if you were watching before the game came out, would probably come as quite the shock to you. There's also a neat little reference to the extended lore in the trailer, about how Spartans were never listed as KIA and only missing in action, hence why there was no body inside the grave. It causes this air of unease and uncertainty over the events to come. In every story, we were told about how much of a hero Master Chief was, how inspirational he could be, and then we were shown where he'd be buried. Well, where he would be buried if they had a body, but the point still stands. The Believe campaign is probably one of the most powerful ad campaigns to ever exist. It really made Halo 3 feel like so much more than a fun game about shooting aliens. And on top of that, we got the Landfall miniseries about a team of Marines and ODSTs trying to track Master Chief as he falls from space, and it's honestly horrifying. The Covenant are really scary from the perspective of these ordinary humans. The Brutes were monsters that will tear you apart without a second thought. It once again depicted the conflict as a gritty and dark environment to be in, making the events seem that much more dire, and showing you just how much humanity needs a hero like the Master Chief. All these ads are on YouTube and it's well worth the watch. Calling them ads doesn't even seem right, they feel like so much more, and yes, I'm aware of what I'm saying. I am aware I'm saying I had an emotional reaction to basically product propaganda, but please, do yourself a favor and give them a watch. Don't think of them as videos trying to sell you Halo 3, but as short stories set in the Halo universe. They're phenomenal, and I want to know how much that diorama costs. I will give you anything. Besides the Believe ad campaign, there's very little to talk about. Bungie was far more open with the development of Halo 3 and it went pretty smoothly. There was access to a multiplayer beta if you bought a copy of Crackdown, and people really liked what they got to test. And also, damn man, that reveal trailer E3 2006, everyone was hyped. We were all ready to finish the fight, and so came the release date. 25th of September, 2007. Halo 3 releases. 10 out of 10s across the board, everyone loved it. What do you want me to say? You all know it. Even if you've never touched an Xbox 360, you all know Halo 3 was the king of that console. I'm really sorry if this part of the video has been brief, but honestly, everything up to this point has been pretty straightforward. So let's get into the meat of the video then. Let's dive into what is, in my opinion, the best Halo campaign experience, and let's see if going through it changes that mindset.
They let me pick. Did I ever tell you that?
So we open up with a monologue from Cortana talking about why she chose the Master Chief as her Spartan as we look out into the night sky on Earth. The music is gentle, delicate, and distinctly Halo, yet everything feels pretty distinct and unique so far, building up to a pretty original first mission experience.
But you had something they didn't. Something no one saw but me. Can you guess? Luck.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a Halo opening without a fall from space. So this light we saw was Truth's key ship from Halo 2, and this light that hit the Earth must be the Master. Oh, he got hit bad. Chief's in a bad state from his fall, and the Marines have come to pick him up, accompanied by our boy, Sergeant Johnson, who looks frankly stunning, as does everything. The graphical improvement from Halo 2 it's obvious, and it's amazing.
Radio for Vito. Heavy lift gear. We're not leaving them here.
Yeah, you're not.
Honestly, I love this. What's not to love about this? Chief's rising and the music swelling is just perfect. And the banter between Johnson and Chief? It immediately reacquaints us with the characters of the two and what the situation is from the last game. Chief came back to Earth, but he's left Cortana behind, something that's clearly weighing down on him. And then we have a very quick transition into the standard Halo thumbstick test, showing the player the basic controls on how to control the Chief, but once again, it's pretty different. We're not aboard some human super ship or station, we're in a jungle in the middle of nowhere, and just having this Marine medic use this to check if Chief's okay after his fall by holding a little PDA in a different location is just... Am I really gonna praise this game over how it shows you the thumbstick controls? Yes. Yes, I am. It sets up the hectic and guerrilla feel Halo 3 is going for, and it's different to the previous two games. And on top of that, there's been a slight HUD change as well. We still have only shields and no health, but instead it's placed directly in the top center of the screen. This is the HUD placement every Halo game uses after 3, and it feels like the best placement for this. I like it. You know what would make this game better though?
Chief, wait! The Arbiter's with us!
My son! My boy! My two spacemen are finally meeting again and are being forced to work together despite the fact they clearly have some beef over the previous game. And I love that these two are pretty much measuring each other up. I love that Chief is clearly showing he's in control of the situation, that Arbiter's life is in his hands, only Arbiter doesn't give a single shit.
Were it so easy.
And following that, we get that age-old Halo tradition of Sergeant Johnson giving us a unique line depending on your difficulty, and a few funny lines thrown in there as well. And that leads into the first moment of gameplay, and the first thing you're given is an old friend. The assault rifle is back and looks fantastic. Really, everything looks fantastic. Before we're given any shooting engagements, we're presented with a short walk through the woods, really showing off Halo 3's environments, and once again, the step up from 2 is astounding, and I'd say that everything still looks amazing to this day. The weapons, the plants, the land, the armor, I'd happily say that nearly everything in this game still holds up. Maybe the faces are a little wonky, but even so, 2007 man, it still looks just fine while everything else looks great. And also the lighting, it's to die for. And the interactivity too, the plants and water all react as you wade through them. It's so well done. And I'm rambling about the first 30 seconds of walking, so I should probably move on. So as you press on, you hear a familiar rumbling overhead and look up to see the Phantom dropship. Of course, that too has got a visual upgrade from Halo 2, and just the light bouncing off the metals, the details of green and purple. Bungie have really killed it with the new models, and not too far from here we can see... Oh god, oh no. Straight away? Brutes? Well, I suppose it only makes sense. The elites have left the Covenant, the Arbiter has sided with humanity. I guess something would have to replace them as the big bads of the Covenant. And they're packing shiny new armor too, looking far more imposing and important than the thuggish apes we saw in 2. And they're leading squads of grunts? I guess that alliance between them and the elites didn't last long, which probably means the hunters won't be coming to our aid and fight by our side either. Shame. I'm gonna miss that. But look at these designs. The metal looks like metal. The designs retain that wonderful Halo simplicity, but have detail where it's needed. But let's get on with this. Let's face down the nightmare that are the brutes. Huh. That was easier than I expected. So not only have the brutes had a visual upgrade, but their gameplay has changed as well. They're a lot less tanky, but feel just that bit smarter than Halo 2's brutes. But they will berserk if you take their helmets off. However, this will leave them in a weakened state and they're pretty weak to headshots, giving you time to pick them off if you can land a shot before it begins smacking you around. And they come with more of their own weapons too. No longer are they just wielding red plasma rifles, they now have the Spiker, an SMG that fires, well, spikes, and comes with 2 knives attached to the barrel of the gun. It's a weapon that feels distinctly brute-like, fitting them entirely. And what's more, dual wielding is back in the game, boys. You want that pistol and spiker combo? Go for it. Oh yeah, speaking of which, the pistol. A definite improvement over 2, but nowhere near as good as CE's version. I do at least feel like it can harm something this time if I get desperate. Which is really what the pistol aims to be in this game. It's that weapon you keep in your back pocket just in case, as opposed to the pistol in Halo 2, which is useless. And this is the part where you may be introduced to a whole new mechanic for Halo 3. Equipment. Brutes tend to be carrying gadgets to help them on the field, but if you kill them before they can deploy it, you can use it instead. The first one you're likely to be introduced to is the bubble shield, a deployable area of cover that completely protects you from any projectiles while you're inside. Equipment really changes the shape of the battlefield and can come in really handy when you're in a pinch. Especially that bubble shield. The bubble shield is a gift from God. Feel like you're taking damage from all sides? Throw the bubble shield out to give yourself a moment to think, assess the situation, and see if you can pick off any brutes or grunts giving you a hard time and making yourself an opening. Another new addition to Halo's sandbox are new grenade types beyond the standard frag and plasma. The brutes come equipped with spike grenades, A long chunk of metal with blades sticking out of the end that will embed onto a surface or person and then send shrapnel flying in every direction. It's like the plasma grenade, but it'll stick onto a surface and won't create as big of an explosion. It's a useful tool, and the addition of more grenades creates a wider and more interesting sandbox. This first combat encounter, the brutes and grunts with the phantoms coming down providing you with new weapons and now equipment, it already makes this level so much more distinct in comparison to its predecessors. That's not to say that Pillar of Autumn or Cairo Station are bad, far from it. But Halo 3 feels so much like its own thing in comparison. Immediately opening up on greenery with occasional sections of stone buildings makes for one colourful and memorable opening. But the next section serves to familiarise yourself with good old mechanics. The game expertly leads the player using its lighting to a new area and you're presented with sleeping grunts. The player can try sneaking around to take out as many as they can while not alerting the other squads, or just go in guns blazing and wake everyone up. And of course we're given the good old weapons like the plasma pistol and needler, reintroduced to these wonderful jackal models, and it seems that the usual rule with the grunts has transitioned over to their brute commanders. If you kill the brute, the grunts will flee. And we're also given another moment of storytelling. As you turn the corner, you can see a brute attempting to interrogate a marine, and if you're quick enough, you can even save him and have a quick interaction with him. Speaking of the marines, they're pretty much as good as they were in Halo 2. They're full of character from many nationalities, both male and female, and rocking that fantastic green body armor. This once again gives the UNSC so much personality and helps to remind you that you're fighting for these people. You're fighting for Earth. Speaking of personality, the Covenant has just as much. The grunts are still loudmouths who will yell pathetic insults at you only to run away screaming and crying if you get too close. But the brutes this time offer you something new to listen to in comparison to the elites of old. Brutes in Halo 2? They weren't that talkative. In Halo 3 they're a whole other beast, as opposed to the eloquence and Shakespearean tone of the elites as they cursed your existence. The brutes instead will talk about ripping you apart and feasting on your bones. They're pretty different to the elites, and immediately give the Covenant a far more violent personality than before. And once again you're led by the lighting to another cave system where you experience this.
Could you sacrifice me to complete your mission? Could you watch me die?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a weird thing. I mean, even the Marines seem to sense it. Some ask if the Chief's okay and report that his vitals were saying he died. But yeah, you better get used to this because it's gonna happen a lot throughout the game. At some points, everything will just slow down so you can hear some cryptic speech from Cortana, and yeah, it can get a little infuriating at times. There's plenty of moments where it's pretty unnecessary. I guess it's to remind you that Cortana is important to Chief, but honestly the story does a good job of that anyway. Most of this feels pointless. Anyway, moving on. You're brought to an opening where your Pelican pickup is supposed to be, and here you're granted Halo 2's golden child, the battle rifle. It's just a little thing, but having both the battle rifle and assault rifle at the same time, the go-to weapons of CE and 2, it just feels special. I like having it. It's the first game to do this. But the BR definitely feels different to the handle of Halo 2. That's because it's a projectile weapon now. For those of you who didn't know, Halo 2's battle rifle was a hit scan weapon. That essentially means that when you click the trigger, the damage is immediately done to whatever you're looking at. In Halo 3, the fact that it's a projectile weapon means that the bullet actually travels, leaving time for an enemy to dodge or react, which in turn means you'll have to pace your shots and be far more careful with the BR. It's different, like I said, but I feel like it's just as effective in the campaign, and sure, it's not the death machine it used to be, but honestly, I would say I prefer having to plan my shots with the BR. Anyway, the Pelicans get shot at by Banshees, and there's a really weird audio issue with the dialogue overlaps, which is... But anyway, the new mission is to rescue Johnson and the survivors of that Pelican crash, which leads you to an old... friend. Oh, not again! I can't do it! Where the hell are... Oh. Thank you, Bungie. Yeah, the model change to the sniper jackals has made their encounters so much easier thanks to the addition of their headlight. You can now actually see who's shooting you and from where, and killing them will give you the carbine, which looks absolutely fantastic in Halo 3, easily my favourite iteration of the weapon. And like the BR, it's a projectile weapon, meaning you'll have to plan your shots, but it's still so satisfying to use. But if you do want that hit scan weapon, you can play on a higher difficulty and you'll likely get your hands on the beam rifle here, which... yeah, Halo 3 has the best beam rifle look as well, and it's still really satisfying to use with fantastic sound design. Ahead you can see this brute chieftain hanging from a phantom as he inspects the crashed Pelican. It's here I'd like to point out the changes to the Phantoms are more than visual. Instead of having 3 plasma mortars on their belly, they only have a single one, but instead they have hangar doors that can open up and allow the squads of brutes, jackals and grunts to jump down while being protected by a plasma turret. You're actually given the opportunity to take out the gunner, and what's more is you can actually take out the Covenant units before they're even deployed. The brief window you have while the Covies are packed inside the Phantom and drop down before being ready for combat is a godsend, and makes these interactions with the Phantoms far more, well, interactive. There's a lot more to talk about with the Phantoms, but we'll get back to that later. If you choose to jump down to the Pelican, there's plenty of ammunition and weapons for you to scavenge, and even the sniper rifle. This feels like a really early introduction to the weapon in comparison to the other games, but it just makes for a far more unique first mission experience. The game's rewarding you for having a look around and taking different approaches to combat encounters. And carried over from Halo 2, you can swap weapons with your Marines and grant them better ways to defend themselves. So when you've got 1 bullet left in your sniper, maybe hand it off to a Marine. Let them have a go with it. Means you'll always have cover from one powerful as hell weapon. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, you can't swap weapons with the Arbiter. If you want to do that, you'll have to kill him and quickly swap whatever weapons you were carrying with whatever Arbiter dropped before he gets right back up. But if you keep doing this though, everyone's gonna get upset and start trying to kill you. Understandably so. But speaking of Arbiter though, the man is an absolute badass, accompanying you throughout the entirety of this mission and being able to tank a ton of damage thanks to his shields. It's like having a second player with you at all times. In fact, if you play Halo 3 on co-op, the second player will be given control of the Arbiter. There's points in the game where Arbiter will leave you or not be with you, but if you're on co-op, then cutscenes and dialogue are changed to include Arbiter. It's a nice addition. Definitely an improvement over having 2 Master Chiefs running around. And if you have a 3rd or 4th player, then these 2 will be playing as extra elites who do have their own lore and characters, and I love them, but it's not in this game, so I have to move on. Arbiter comes across as basically the same character as he was in Halo 2. He's got a bone to pick with the Prophets, but he still has that hint of mercy we saw from his debut game. You can often catch him seeming upset over the grunts or other members of the Covenant still siding with the Prophet of Truth and trying to convince them to turn away and join him and the humans. And though he may seem to hate Chief, he's happy to help him complete the mission and save Johnson. The battle on the dam is a great end to the first mission, pushing through whatever the Covenant can throw at you and facing down your first brute chieftain. A tanky brute that serves as almost a mini-boss who'll come running at you wielding the fearsome gravity hammer, a weapon similar to what Tartarus used in the ending of Halo 2. If he gets close enough to do damage, then it's over for you. You're gonna become a part of the floor or be sent up into space. What's more is chieftains have a variety of equipment, including invincibility. What's that, Dan? Did you mispronounce invisibility? No! Chieftains can become invincible for a short amount of time where you can deal no damage to them and just have to survive as they come charging at you. But when you kill them, you're rewarded with one hell of a weapon. You can use the gravity hammer, and this really does make you feel like a god. It is potentially one of, if not the most satisfying weapons to use, and here, just watch and listen to this. Music to my ears. So after pulling Johnson out of his cage, you have to hunker down with him and the Arbiter and whatever's left of your Marines as the Covenant throw whatever they can at you. Brutes and grunts will come flooding at you, and you might even catch a new tactic that the grunts can employ. The grunts now, instead of fleeing when their superiors are killed, can instead choose to strap 2 plasma grenades to their hands and run at you. They become fearsome little kamikazes, and if you're not aware that one's close to you, it can be a quick and messy end. But when you make it through, you're in for a treat as you watch your first and second Phantom destruction of the series, marking an end to the mission. And that's Sierra 117. That is the opening to Halo 3, and it's fantastic. Immediately, it sets up a different environment than what we've had before. We've seen metal corridors and the might of humanity's navies. Now we're in the jungle, making do with whatever we can scrounge as the Covenant invasion is in full force. And the Covenant under brute control just feels different to what we're used to. They're far more feral and quick to anger, far more violent, far more, well, brutal. The brutes themselves serve as good elite surrogates. They have the same function the Squidlips used to have, but bring their own personality and style to the role. I'd also say that Halo 3's brutes are an improvement over Halo 2's. They're far more balanced and far easier to manage, though I do feel like the Berserk mode may in fact be a little too easy. Their movements are easy to predict and they're easy to take down. Maybe if they were a little faster or hit a tiny bit harder, or hell, even kept the behavior from Halo 2 where if you kill all the brutes in the pack, the final brute will berserk, with all his armor and shields intact. Don't go as far as it did in Halo 2, but meet somewhere in the middle. The brutes are still a great species to fight and, like I said, manage to make themselves feel separate to the elite-led Covenant by being more vicious. Humanity's clearly already on the back foot. Skulking through the jungle, seeing brutes torch marines, and having the pelicans shot out of the sky really sell this. Humanity is using whatever it has left and whatever it can find to win these battles with the Covenant. And the new and returning weapons all feel great to use. Though I'm sure some people may take issues with the weapons like the carbine and battle rifle becoming projectiles rather than hit scan, but I'd say it opens up the weapons sandbox and allows other weapons to shine, forcing you to take a different approach rather than killing everything in sight with the God Gun. Equipment is also a welcome addition. Bubble shields and regeneration fields make approaching the Covenant entirely different, whether you have the equipment or they do. As a third entry into the gameplay loop, it isn't intrusive, and the fact that it's one-time use means the player has to think about when to use it, which is, in my opinion, how a third aspect to combat should be treated. Halo's combat is always focused around utility. It's focused around collecting what you need and preserving it. Equipment fits that pretty well. So all in all, a fantastic first mission, familiar yet distinct in many ways. Sierra 117 was a blast. After that, we begin the mission Crow's Nest. Johnson's Pelican lowers into the UNSC base, and as Chief exits, you can see Marines reacting to him with reverence. Some of them badly injured, but motivated and ecstatic just by seeing the Spartan. And we're reintroduced to Miranda Keyes, who welcomes the boys back and fills Chief in on what he's missed. Delta Halo has been stopped, but the Prophet of Truth is now looking for something called the Ark, and has the majority of the Covenant's forces stationed in Africa to dig for something. Once again, continuing the threads and locations set up in Halo 2, and giving us environments you might not expect to see a big alien empire invade. Seeing as there's very little evidence to the contrary, we have to assume that whatever Truth is digging for has to be the Ark, and if he gets a hold of it, he can activate all the Halos at once, killing everything in the galaxy. There's some little things I love in this cutscene, and it mostly revolves around Arbiter. As the group pass by, two Marines salute Keyes, Johnson, and Chief, but lower their arms as Arbiter passes through, showing that perhaps humanity is still uneasy about trusting the elites. And can you blame them? Yes, the elites had been lied to by Truth and forced into committing genocide, but they still happily committed genocide. And yet, despite Arbiter not getting the respect he deserves, as an injured Marine passes by, it's the Arbiter who mostly focuses on him. I love my big alien husband. Anyway, we're reintroduced to Lord Hood, who seems happy to see Chief. But following that, we're given something that I'm admittedly not a fan of.
I only have a handful of ships, Master Chief. It's a big risk, but I'm confident.
Hell, not again.
Emergency generators, now!
Shielding failed. They're down and charging.
As soon as they're up, re-establish contact with Lord Hood. Let him know.
All of you vermin, cowering in the dirt, thinking, what, I wonder, that you might escape the coming fire? No, your world will burn until its surface is but glass, and not even your demon will live to creep, blackened from its hole to mar the reflection of our passage, the culmination of our journey. For your destruction is the will of the gods, and I am their instrument.
Okay, let's unpack this. Firstly, it's a really cool speech. A speech you can slap on a trailer to market your game for sure. So why am I not a fan of this? Because the person who said it is the Prophet of Truth. In Halo 2, you are led to believe that Truth is a calm, collected, and conniving villain. He's a monster who will never stab you in the front, and will always go for the back. He keeps his cool in the most dire of circumstances, and quickly deals with whatever's in his way. Like I said in my last video, he's a politician, but here, I just can't imagine the same character from Halo 2 delivering this monologue. The voice actor change does little to help this jarring change in tone and character. And for the record, I'm not saying this new voice actor does a bad job. I think for the character of Halo 3's Truth, he does a pretty damn good job, but as a character it's just not as interesting and not as slimy as Halo 2's Truth. Halo 2's Truth would stab you in the back. Halo 3's Truth just yelled about how he's gonna stab you in the front. I've tried to reason this away by saying Truth never considered humanity a threat, and now that he faces literally zero opposition, his megalomania is taking over. But honestly, that's just making excuses for the game. Halo 2's Truth would never have developed megalomania. The character's just fundamentally different in Halo 3. And he's not the only one, but we'll get to that when the time comes. But speaking of weird choices for dialogue...
Where should they go?
To war.
Yeah, do I need to say anything? Everyone's ripped this line apart. It sounds cool in the moment, but once you think about it for more than a second, it just It doesn't make sense. Moving on. Chief has to secure the defenses so Keyes can evacuate everyone from the base, leaving the Arbiter and Johnson behind and letting us roam around and take everything in as we move on the way to our objective. And once again, it hits home about the state the UNSC is in. The Covenant have really gotten them beat, and they've forced to set up shop in wherever they can. This base looks like it's ready to collapse without any help from the Covenant. It's old, rusted, the walls are cracked, the technology all looks ready to be removed at a moment's notice. It's a far cry from the Pillar of Autumn or Cairo station. And it's all that's left. Something I want to point out here is how the absence of Cortana is handled in Halo 3. In Combat Evolved in 2, it's in these moments where she'd likely be whispering in your head the directions to go or making a snarky comment, but we don't have that. But we do have something in her place. The Marines. Marines will excitedly tell you that they'll show you the way and lead you where you need to go, only giving them more character and endearing the player to them further. Halo 3's Marines are peak Marines. They'll lead you to a small armory which will let you get reacquainted with the SMGs, and they're exactly as they were in Halo 2, little nightmares with a kick and ready to be dual-wielded. Following the Marines, we're sent into a tunnel where we can see the good old Warthog get just completely destroyed. There's something about this environment I just love. It's the sandy, stony texture from Halo 2 perfected in my opinion. The griminess further extenuating the standards of this base and what the Marines are forced to reside inside. There's crates and vehicles strewn around, all of which have some physics to them, making the environment feel all the more alive. Even down to the little things like pushing buttons to open the doors, it makes things feel less like a train track on the way to the combat encounters, and more like a real world that we're in. After the tunnels, we reach one of the hangars and are granted turrets to defend the position, and there's a neat little update to the turrets. Master Chief can now rip them from their stands and walk around with them, using them as heavy weapons. I really like this addition. It grants the players more choice and lets you feel like even more of a badass. Do you want to have all the ammunition you can but be rooted to a single spot, or do you want to take the fight to the brutes at the expense of limited ammo? Either way, it's going to get your blood pumping. After being told to return to the ops center, you can hear something scuttling about in the ventilation. I'm sure it's nothing.
This way! Look! Coming out of the vents! Line them up! Line them up!
No, I'm feeling good, thank you. The drones have returned with yet another snazzy new look, and God bless Halo 3 for using the advanced technology of the 360, because Bungie decided there should be 1,000 times more of the drones for every encounter. I love it so much. I love being shot at insects from every direction. It's literally like fighting a cloud of flies, except the flies have guns! After you're done having a fit, you return to the ops center to find Johnson has rigged a bomb to blow as soon as everyone's clear of the base. But he has another mission for you, telling you to rescue Marines being held captive in the barracks, warning you that the brutes are not merciful and a grisly fate awaits those Marines if something isn't done. So, arming yourself with Halo 3's shotgun, you set off to rescue your boys. Now the shotgun was a little finicky in Halo 2, so let's see how Halo 3 handled it. Oh, this is delicious. The Halo 3 shotgun is definitely an improvement. As opposed to literally just tickling brutes, it tears through them. Dropping down into what's slowly becoming a hive of drones, Cortana yet again decides to tell you stuff that doesn't make any sense, slowing everything down until she's done talking. Yeah, it's I wish what she said actually made some kind of sense. Or that it made sense with what's happening with Chief. Why is this happening to Chief? Why do his vitals register as KIA when he has little PTSD flashbacks to his little blue GF? But thankfully, we get reunited at Arby, who's kicking ass and doing his best to convince whatever drones he can to rebel. Honestly, I could listen to him all day. Keith David does a fantastic job voicing him and every line is perfect. He helps you push into the barracks where the brutes are torturing Marines. If you move fast enough, you can even save a few and have some backup to push further up the barracks. This will lead you to an encounter with a brute war chieftain wielding a dismounted plasma cannon. And of course you can take it from him if you beat him. It basically operates as a Covey version of the human turret. It tears up brutes just as well. The Arbiter and Chief collect as many surviving Marines as they can, and they learn that Johnson has lost the ops center and the bomb. So that's something you'll likely have to fix later. But first, let's get these Marines to safety. This leads to an encounter with yet another new kind of brute. Jump brutes. Big, scary ape boys armed with a jetpack that lets them leap all about the place. No one near as elegant as elite rangers of old, but they match what a similar role would be for a brute counterpart. And they're a ton of fun to pop out of the air. Exploring a bit is rewarded as well, as you can get access to an invisibility equipment if you stray from the path. But with all the Marines on board and only Chief left in the base, it's down to him to rearm the bomb. After getting another reminder from Cortana that your job is to save the Earth and dismantling some Covenant defenses, you'll reach the Ops Center to see the Brutes are having a conversation with Truth. Truth wants to know what humanity knows and even threatens his own men that should they fail him, they might not join the rest of their brothers on the Great Journey. So the Brute Chieftain demands the drones to scour the machine, alluding to the fact that they actually serve the Covenant as engineers and mechanics, and demands that they gather any information on the Ark and how humanity plans to stop Truth. But of course, Chief puts a stop to that, reactivating the bomb and running to safety past panicking Covey forces and yet more Cortana monologues. I really want to defend these or care about these, but I just can't bring myself to. Where is the meaning? What is the meaning? I do find it awful yet slightly funny that you can see a phantom depart, leaving behind so many grunts and jackals. Finally, Chief reaches the elevator, and as he descends, the bomb goes off and Cortana delivers some final lines.
This place will become your home. This place will become your tomb.
That would have been cool had she not been interrupting me every 5 minutes. Crow's Nest is a really fun mission with a unique environment for Halo 3. I love how chaotic it feels running back and forth and doing your best to save as many Marines as possible and the banter they have. The Covenant are getting increasingly formidable with the introduction of new weapons, units, and species. Things are ramping up. The only down on this mission is the really weird dialogue at the beginning and the abundance of Cortana interruptions. They feel pretty unnecessary, but honestly, they don't do much to blemish this fantastic mission. But we've got greater stuff to come, because now we've got Savo Highway. Hey everybody, no Savo Highway just for today. I've had to cut this video up into a few pieces because it was just becoming a bit of a monster to work on. The full thing is about 2 hours long, so I'll probably be splitting it into 4 separate pieces, maybe 3 if I can push myself. So the Savo Highway section and everything to follow should be coming out pretty soon. Don't worry about it, you won't be waiting another 2 months for Halo 3 2. Thanks so much to Sawtooth44 and Kaiba for donating, it means a lot to us, and thanks so much for getting through this video, and thank you for your patience. Halo 3 Part 2 will be coming out soon, I promise you. See you then.